Welcome back to Breaking Tropes. Today we will be looking at the work of Yasuhiro Nightow, the funny, stunning, gunning mangaka. And we won't be just looking at these works, we will be ranking them, so stay tuned till the end to see which one's the best and which one's the worst. What's up guys, it's been a while, but there's going to be a lot more stuff coming up here, and the schedule is going to be a little bit more consistent moving forward. You can expect, some manga versus anime, you can expect, some reviews of certain series, some of my favorite series coming up. So stay tuned, keep watching, there's going to be a lot more stuff here coming up in the next few months. So appreciate you guys for sticking with me. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers, and I didn't even really do anything for 6 months. So imagine what is possible if I start grinding and we start getting out some more content here, especially the manga versus anime. You guys really like that. So I'm gonna keep pumping those out and some other adaptation comparison work. So just stay tuned for that. And this video was kind of inspired by the Trigun video, which probably has the most views on my channel right now. So you guys were asking me a lot about what did I think about Stampede, and some people were asking about Gungrave. So this is a direct response to all those who are asking me about that. And it's just another way to look at another mangaka and see what he's all about. So let's get it on. So just like he did with Naoki Urasawa, we're going to break down some of the themes that show up in a lot of Nightow's work, and then we're going to get straight to the work. There will be spoiler sections, and then there are going to be some non-spoiler sections. So you'll be warned, don't worry about it. So one, we're going to start with the Nightow Necessities. A lot of these works have guns, supernatural beings, and edgy posing. I will say that there's a heavy American comic influence. A lot of characters that are based off of American comic characters, Spider-Man characters, and so that's something you'll notice right away. And I'll even add on to this by saying that Nightow's characters are very uncanny and strange, especially the main characters. And it's definitely the characters in Nightow's worlds that remind us of this.
I think you're a nice man. How can you believe that weird guy out there is Vash the Stampede, the legendary gunman?
As far as I can tell, you're totally neurotic, you weirdo.
So frustrating.
You're an awkward guy, Brandon. You know that?
So number 2, we have yin and yang characters and villains that start off good, then turn bad. And I don't want you to think of yin and yang as just good and evil. I want you to think of it from like the basic, traditional idea of what yin and yang is, which is that both rely on one another to exist, both need each other to exist. We have a night and a day, we have our good sides and our bad sides, and I think it's that idea that Nightow plays around with a lot in his work, and it's not just the stale good guy, bad guy type thing going on. We have there's a lot of layers to it, and these characters are present in all of the works that I have, and it's very prominent too, so yin and yang characters. So number 3, we have fragile idealism, and that is maintaining your belief systems despite the negative effect it might have on you. So a lot of Nightow's characters are pursuing their way of life, their idea of what life should be relentlessly. And that's despite the negative effect it might have on them or the people they care about or their environment. So you see that in all of Nightow's work. And I think Nightow's trying to show that it's a human thing to hold on to our ideas, even though they might sometimes be rooted in ignorance or a misguided idea of what's right, or just being stubborn. So let's move on to Gungrave, the 2003 anime. So this is a series based on a video game. It actually spanned 4 different video games. Even had a VR video game. That's kind of weird. If you played any of the video games, let me know in the comment section below if they're any good. They kind of just look like beat 'em ups, to be honest with you, but maybe they're pretty good. And to be honest, I wasn't really expecting much out of this anime. Never heard of it. Didn't think it was going to be any good. But shout out to Sonic Falcon 16 who suggested I look into this series. If you want me to cover a series, suggest it. You never know, I might do it. So Nightow designed the characters and created the series, but he had nothing to do with the writing or production of the anime. But I have to imagine that the series isn't far off from Nightow's vision. It's got a lot of his themes in it. The show revolves around Brandon Heat and spans across 4 different time skips. We start by following Heat, or Beyond the Grave, 13 years after events that occurred in the past. Events that left our hero zombified. necrolized, which is a process to resurrect the dead created by Dr. Tokioka, who basically manages Grave's existence. We eventually flash back to the origins of Brandon Heat and his best friend Harry McDowell and how they rise through the ranks of the Millennium Crime Syndicate. And that's really where the show shines. This show was a low-key gem and it fits the mold of 90s anime, so think Cowboy Bebop, Big O, Ghost in the Shell, or think of crime mafia movies like The Departed, Scarface, The Godfather, American Gangster. When you think of 90s anime, what do you think of? I think of episodes that start with a dreary monologue.
Humans are creatures of comparison, constantly deciding whether things are good or bad, or better or worse than other things. Eventually, we make so many comparisons that our overloaded brains will accept anything. Good or bad, right or wrong, not caring which is which.
Darker colors and presentation, long limbs, and darker themes, which are all present in Gungrave. The dub is great, so if you're a fan of any of these movies, shows, tropes, you'll probably enjoy Gungrave. So moving on to some of the pros here. So as I alluded to earlier, the show peaks during the long flashback, and that's from episode 2 through 16. This is where most of the character development is. The plot is at its best here, and there are multiple developments that make you question how everything is going to go down, even though you've seen the future already. This flashback is akin to like the Golden Age arc of Berserk, and is the meat and potatoes of the show. And moving on to the characters, they were great in this show. There was a lot of character development, not just in personalities, but in character design. Each time skip is effective because afterwards, pretty much all of the characters have different attires and sometimes different forms. I felt like the time skips were very justified because shit really felt different. I really liked how Brandon's desires and values were challenged throughout the show. My guy brings a new definition to the meaning ride or die. And that's one of our themes, right? Fragile idealism. Clearly you see that through Brandon Heat. And moving on to the cons. So episode 1 made me feel like I was going to watch a crappy RoboCop ripoff. It was stale and boring and not much was revealed. And that brings me to episodes 17 through 25. The last episodes felt like a video game where you have to take out all the bosses before the final battle. I think that's called a boss rush. It was predictable, but there were still some good moments in between, and the last episode was a great conclusion. I'm guessing you get this kind of thing when a video game is adapted into an anime. Also, I didn't really like the supernatural zombie stuff or necrolization, which started in episode 9. It felt like it was too over the top and took the show away from its strength, which is being a crime mafia anime. We're gonna talk spoilers here, so if you haven't seen the show, skip over this, it's a good one. You don't want it spoiled. So we clearly see all of Nightow's tropes in this series. Just look at the big ass guns at Beyond the Grave. And just look at Beyond the Grave in general. He's weird, he's half dead, he has the backstory of a superhero. But why don't we talk about yin and yang characters? First, we have Harry McDowell, who becomes a selfish, overly ambitious control freak on his way to becoming the leader of Millennium. And second, we have Brandon Heat, who is the selfless, awkward hitman of Millennium and the hero of the show. Both these characters are slaves to their idealism, and it ends up hurting the people around them and destroying their own world. Definitely sounds like this guy and this guy. Episode 16 shows off the duality of these characters and is one of the best of the series. Okay, so did Harry really need to kill Brandon? I mean, Brandon had given up, he had thrown the pistol down, he wasn't going to hurt his friend. And the way I interpret this scene is, both of these characters are doubling down on what they believe in. Brandon's not going to hurt his friend, Harry wants to control everything. Someone's gotta die, bang bang, great stuff here. Trigun 98, so I'm just going to include the anime in this one, the manga, and maximum pretty much everything with that original series. I did do a manga versus anime on Trigun already, so if you want to know what I think about that series, check that video out. Thanks for all the views. The audio isn't that great on that video. I plan on re-releasing that at some point. Anyways, what else is there to say? Trigun pretty much follows Nightow's criteria to a T. We got a plethora of guns, yin and yang characters, and that fragile idealism that I keep bringing up. Vash is a great character, it's a fun series and a low-key gem. But does that all hold up with a new look and a new story? 2023's Trigun Stampede. Now this is a 12-episode reimagination of the original series. And it's interesting because Nightow again was not nearly as hands-on with this as he was with the original. He basically just oversaw the production and was happy for there to be more content in the Trigun universe. So this was a Studio Orange project headed by Katsuhiro Taki and Kenji Muto. Nightow didn't have any major issues with the finished project, so he'll count it as one of his works. So my opinion on the series, let's start with Vash's look. I don't think there's a problem with it if it was another anime, but for Trigun, which is supposed to be a space western, it's a bit strange. And it kind of mirrors the more punky, edgy, futuristic style that Stampede opts for. Now, from my understanding and from what Wiki says, this is a space western, but it felt like more of a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk. Moving forward, it would be interesting to see if the aesthetic of the show changes. Overall, I did like that they added a lot from Maximum to the story. They introduced plants a lot faster, but the show wasn't really that interesting until like maybe the last few episodes, so basically I'm saying it was okay. So we're gonna go into some pros here really quickly. I thought that the ending was pretty good and they had a pretty good setup here for season 2. Some possible returning characters are coming for the season if there is going to be a second season. They really went all out in the animation, and the last battle was pretty cool. So I did like that Knives was introduced a lot faster than in the anime, but in the manga that whole situation was handled better. So I'll give some props to this as well. Then I will say that the fight scenes were well animated and well choreographed. I don't think I will hate on CGI anymore in anime if it looks like this. Just seems like it's getting better and better by every anime I watch that's like this. Now moving on to the cons here, and it might not be fair to compare this to the original, but if you're going to make a new reimagination of a show, that's what's going to happen and that's what I'm going to do. There really wasn't much character development in this show, which made it hard to care about any of the characters. And that's a complete difference than in the 98 Trigun or the manga. They really kind of dropped the ball with taking their time to explain these characters, and even the new characters that were added were really dry and not that interesting at all. And that leads pretty nicely into the next con, which is terrible pacing. It just felt like things were happening so fast. They did only have 12 episodes, so maybe I'll give them a break on that, but especially from episode to episode, it's just things are happening, things are moving fast. There really isn't any kind of patient storytelling going on here. There's no setup to characters, to environments. It's not good. And I do have a specific example of this in the spoilers section, but I'll just look at 2 characters here real quick. In Stampede, Lookout Blue Summers is lame and doesn't seem very important to the plot. I mean, what is he even really doing in the show? I don't know. Now you compare that to the 98 anime or the manga, he's a lot cooler. Goes through a lot of different things in the first part of the series. And then we have Livio. Is it cool that Livio's actually in this show? Yes, he wasn't in the 98 anime. But in Stampede, he really doesn't do anything. We get a brief backstory and then he's just gone. Again, is he substantial to the plot? If you don't know Trigun, you might not know at all. He might just be a guy that showed up, he got a backstory and he left. And lastly, Nightow's trope of fragile idealism with Vash does not exist in Stampede. Vash's ideals are not challenged except for maybe the ending. The showrunners could be saving this for season 2, but it is a huge part of the character, so not sure what they were doing or what they're going to do with this. Okay, so moving on to spoilers. We're going to talk about the pacing issue here. Episode 5. So in this episode, Vash and Wolfwood are running away from Monav. Vash and Wolfwood have a conversation, then there's some flashbacks about Monav's past, and then Vash just realizes that Monav is Rollo, who is a child that he befriended in his past. How does he know this? There's no explanation. Unless I'm missing something, they never explain how Vash is able to know that Monav is Rollo. It's like there's a big chunk of the episode missing or something. This to me is a prime example of rushed storytelling, and it's very annoying and very prominent in this show. Even if you ignore the fact that that wasn't explained, there's just holes everywhere with characters, and it's almost as if they expect you to know about these characters from the previous series. So with all that being said, I still think that season 2 of Stampede can be pretty good. And if you're looking at this series just as a standalone, you might enjoy it. But if you're a Trigun fan, I think you're going to find a lot of issues with the storytelling. Me, I just look at it as a forgettable series. It's mediocre at best, and it's not something that you're going to remember unless season 2 ends up being good. Kekai Sensen, aka Blood Blockade Battlefront. And so I watched the 2015 anime adaptation. The manga started in 2009, and I hear that it's a lot longer and has 3 parts to it, so I assume that it's probably a more sound narrative. We have 2 seasons, 12 episodes each, and then some OVAs. Leonardo Watch is a wimpy, non-abrasive young man who obtains the all-seeing eye and joins the supernatural crime-fighting organization known as Libra. Our story follows him as he tries to find himself in this new version of New York called Hell Salem's Lot. I would say that this is the oddball of Nightow's work, and there are many reasons for that. Bulky, over-exaggerated guns are replaced with stylistic blood art attacks, which kind of reminded me of Dead Man Wonderland. You do still have your sharpshooting characters, though. We still have a morally strong pacifist-type character in Leonardo Watch, who is based on Peter Parker. Oh, and we also have Dog Hummer, who has this serial-killing symbiote attached to him. Sounds a lot like Carnage, looks a lot like Carnage. This show is pretty wacky, and really it is a comedy when it boils down to it. The animation and art style is amazing, and action scenes are on point for the most part. However, Blockade opts for a more wacky episodic presentation. Season 1 does have a linear storyline, sort of, but most of the episodes are one-offs that add little to the characters and lore. I would say Season 2 adds more depth to each character, and I do remember enjoying those episodes a bit more. The main plot centers around Leonardo Watch and his story with White and Dark in Season 1. Yes, there are characters named White and Dark in this show. Nightow was a little less obvious with his tropes on this one. I read a review that compared Blockade to Futurama, and I gotta say that if Futurama was an anime, it would be Blockade. Well, at least if we're talking weird creatures, an altered version of New York, and a team of supernatural misfits. So moving on to the pros here, I really enjoyed some of the episodes because they were just so wacky, abstract, and off the wall. Like in episode 3 where Klaus has to play this weird game called Crossfire Chess. Basically it's chess with 5 boards and he plays it against this alien monster that grants wishes if you survive the game or kills you if you lose. Or in episode 6 where there's this pudgy alien mushroom guy who loves burgers but he can't get them due to discrimination. So he gets swindled by these 2 douchebags. And these 2 douchebags end up exploiting him because he releases spores that cause amnesia. It's pretty good stuff. Moving on to the second pro, I think the presentation in the OST is pretty good. This is the second best looking anime out of all 4 works, and the soundtrack is fun and noticeable. The bouncy jazz music kind of reminded me of Persona. Okay, moving on to the cons. So a lot of the episodes that weren't abstract were pretty boring, and that's because there's not really a story tying everything together. I hear that the characters White and Dark don't exist in the manga, so I'm assuming that there's probably more of a sound narrative with the manga. It's unfortunate that the anime kind of dropped the ball here because there's a lot of cool ideas that they introduced, they just don't follow through with them, like the Blood Breeds and the 13 Kings. So Blockade was pretty decent. We're not going to do a spoiler section on this though because there really isn't anything to spoil, it's episodic. Anyways, here's my ranking for Yasuhiro Nightow's work. I don't think there's any surprise here, but how would you guys rate these works? Did I forget any? Go ahead and put those rankings in the comment section below. I'll be sure to take a look at them and reevaluate if I'm wrong. I'm not wrong though. Also, let me know if you enjoy this series in the comment section below. I plan on doing more of these in the future. In the meantime, subscribe, like, and talk that sweet shit. And I promise this won't be the last video I have in the next couple of weeks. See you.
What a drag. NANI?!